Hype and expectation are dangerous things, but somehow they seem unavoidable. They're even more unavoidable, in fact, when a successful game or franchise is about to get a new sequel. More than a few times over the years, sequels have been released on the back of immense expectations, only to fail to deliver on them spectacularly. Here, we're going to talk about a few such games. Pokémon Sword and Shield. Most Pokémon fans will tell you that the series has been on a downward spiral ever since Black and White, and Sword and Shield are probably its lowest point to date. Even if you ignore the controversies surrounding the whole National Dex fiasco, Pokémon Sword and Shield are disappointing games. The shocking lack of ambition, the almost complete lack of challenge, the excessive linearity, for all of these reasons and more, Pokémon's mainline console debut fell severely short of expectations. Star Wars The Force Unleashed 2. Star Wars The Force Unleashed was a much better game than most would have expected, so expectations from its sequel were quite high. Sadly, the sub-series proved to be a one-hit wonder. Sure, it looked great at the time, but where its predecessor felt like a unique labor of love, The Force Unleashed 2 felt like a soulless cash grab attempting to capitalize on the first game's surprising success. Not only was it mind-numbingly repetitive, it also told quite possibly one of the worst Star Wars stories of all time, which, in today's day and age, is really saying something. Mass Effect Andromeda. Following up on a trilogy as universally beloved as Mass Effect can't be an easy task, but BioWare surely made it even harder on themselves. A messy development and a switch in engines led to the developer's vision for the game being compromised, and while Mass Effect Andromeda isn't without its strengths, it doesn't even come close to reaching the heights of its predecessors. Ninja Gaiden 3. Ninja Gaiden 3 is a prime example of how things can go wrong when a franchise ends up diluting its identity in an attempt to appeal to a larger crowd. The uncompromising challenge was what defined its predecessors, and removing that from the equation was the worst decision Ninja Gaiden 3 could have made. What we got, as a result, was a shallow, unengaging experience that almost entirely missed the point of what everyone loved about the series. Crackdown 3. Crackdown 3 was doomed from the get-go, even though at first it didn't seem like it. Microsoft had grand ambitions for the game, but multiple delays and developer changes led to most of those ambitions being thrown out the window. A static open world, dull and repetitive gameplay, and thoroughly outdated mechanics were just a few of the many issues that plagued the game. Dynasty Warriors 9. The open world trend has led to some truly excellent reinventions in recent years, but at the same time, franchises that have no business being open world have ended up falling victim to the trend as well. Dynasty Warriors 9 was a prime example of that. From a boring and lifeless open world to a plethora of technical issues to a lot of fan-favorite content being left out of the experience, Dynasty Warriors 9 proved to be quite an unsuccessful reinvention for the series. Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. Here's another rare franchise that's failed to live up to its potential. Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts should have been an excellent 3D platformer, in the vein of its predecessors, but in its attempt to innovate and reinvent the series, it ended up losing its identity. Viewed in isolation, the vehicle-oriented gameplay here can be enjoyable at times, but on the whole, this was far from the revival that series fans had been hoping for. The fact that there hasn't been a new Banjo game since makes its transgressions that much worse. Driver 3. This one was kind of an obvious choice. Almost everything that could have gone wrong went wrong in Driver 3. A barrage of technical issues, a lifeless open world, terrible mission design, you name it. The game was overflowing with crippling issues that ended up completely ruining the experience. The fact that it came out at a time when similar open-world games were flying high did it no favors either. Dino Crisis 3.
What is this?
It's a shame that Capcom has let the Dino Crisis IP lie dormant for so long, even though there seems to be plenty of demand for a revival. But looking back, it's hard to argue with the company's reluctance to bring it back. Because though there's obvious potential for huge success here, at its worst, Dino Crisis was something of a disaster. Dino Crisis 3, for instance, exhibited the series' worst tendencies. From a camera that never failed to get in the way of gameplay to a story that stopped making sense pretty much as soon as it began. Resident Evil 6.
Who knows what she's got in store?
Another team was sent after her. You, Simmons, you're all ours.
You probably saw this one coming, right? Resident Evil is, thankfully, in excellent shape right now, but less than a decade ago it was at its lowest point. That's because, with Resident Evil 6, Capcom, in all its wisdom, chose to focus on all the things that Resident Evil has never been about. Ridiculously over-the-top explosions that would make Michael Bay cringe, a shocking lack of emphasis on actual horror, a story that was so stupid it almost felt like it was being bad on purpose. All of these issues, and more, combined in Resident Evil's worst mainline outing to date. Halo 5 Guardians. Halo began struggling pretty much as soon as Bungie handed the series off to 343 Industries, but no one could have expected that it would ever descend to the level that it did with Halo 5 Guardians. The multiplayer, to be fair, was really good, but the single-player campaign was a giant mess. Not only was it nothing like what pre-release marketing had suggested it would be, it had plenty of issues of its own as well, from a convoluted plot to a surprising lack of focus on the Master Chief. Perfect Dark Zero.
Watch yourself, Joe. You're on Datadyne property now. Our employer wants you to break in, undetected. Mega corporations don't take kindly to intruders. Security is tight.
Sure, technically this is a prequel, but there's no getting around the fact that as a follow-up to the original, Perfect Dark Zero fell short of expectations. That doesn't mean it was a bad game, of course. There was enough on offer here to keep the series fans at least somewhat satisfied, but it mostly definitely did not live up to the expectations that had been set for it. Here's hoping the series' upcoming revival can set things right again. Mirror's Edge Catalyst. Yet another example of how a forced open-world setting can destroy even the most enticing franchises. Mirror's Edge Catalyst should have been a home run, and sure enough, its excellent parkour gameplay surely laid down the foundations for something special. But that open world ended up being, unsurprisingly, unnecessary, paving the way for boring and uninspired mission design. Thanks to that, and a terrible story, Mirror's Edge Catalyst ended up snuffing out any potential future for the promising series. Mafia 3. Mafia 3 is a strange game to critique, because for all its faults, there's really just so much to love here. It tells a spectacular story, and tells it really well. Lincoln Clay is an excellent protagonist, and terrific writing and performances bring him and all other characters in the game to life wonderfully. At the same time, though, Mafia 3 is defined by a drab, dull world, uninspired gameplay mechanics and mission design, and a litany of technical issues that are impossible to ignore. If Mafia 3's gameplay had been able to do justice to its story, it would have been one of the best games of its generation. As it stands right now, it's a huge letdown. Metroid Other M. Other M was an absolute mess in so many ways. The combat mechanics were, to be fair, quite solid, but the narrative side of the experience was a disaster. Bad writing, poor characterization of Samus, and asinine twists came together in what is probably the worst game of all time. That's all for now. If you enjoy what you saw, please hit the like button. And if you're new to the channel, now is a great time to subscribe. We upload brand new videos every single day. After subscribing, don't forget to enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon. Thanks for watching this video, and we'll see you next time, right here on GamingBolt.